Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming in this session. In this session, we are from LG Electronics and recently we opened webOS. So we are going to introduce our webOS open source edition. I'm Joseph. I'm a head of engineering in webOS platform. In my part, I'm going to talk about webOS history, overview, and our future. So agenda is like webOS history, evolution, architecture roadmap. So later, two other people our colleagues will talk about more deep dive into the architecture and our roadmap. So my part, I will explain about the inception of webOS in LG Electronics. When I joined LG Electronics in 2012, our TV business unit, they had like Netcast legacy platform. But they struggled a lot because the platform was like quite messy and the code is like a spaghetti. So they couldn't improve much. So they just like thought about they'd better find a new platform rather than like modifying the existing legacy platform. So they looked for some platform. In outside, there was a company who acquired the Palm and struggled with webOS. It was like the HP. They released a touchpad device with webOS platform, but the business was not quite good. So they opened their webOS. So it called like Open webOS. So we searched for platform and we found this Open webOS. And we thought like this Open webOS could be the way to go in the future. So we just looked into the webOS platform before we acquired the webOS from HP. Why we focused on this like web-based platform? So mobile internet speed is like very fast nowadays. Like in 5G, like some say like it will be 100 gigabps. It's like quite fast. So even like web technology can be very fast in mobile side. And embedded chipset price, like as you see, like it's very cheap nowadays. And also HTML5 is like very standardized. And not only HTML5, but JavaScript also. Nowadays, like many people are using React and React Native, or like some of the JavaScript client-side solution, also like a Node.js or like some service side too. So we think this like web-based platform could be in the future. It could lead the technology. So in TV side, why web-based platform is good? Because like this web-based technology is like best for delivering contents. Because like the device to show content, that is like TV. And also the contents like linear video or like multiple videos in the single app. So these like web technology could be good. And this is like open standard and very, very easy to port in other devices. And also, like you can satisfy all stakeholders, not only manufacturer, but also content provider, and also OTT service provider or like application providers. So we acquired the webOS from HP in 2013, and within a year, we successfully released webOS TV. In 2014, Consumer Electronics Show, we released webOS TV, and we got a lot of like good reputation from like many medias. And after that, we not only released this webOS-based TV, but also like digital signages and hotel TV. And later, 1 year later, we released like webOS-based smartwatch. This one is not only Wi-Fi, but it supported the LTE too. And we transformed lots of like services and internal platform to form it like very small profile and low profile. So like low CPU consumption and memory footage, and also like we improved a lot, like something like power management and lots of things. It helped us to open our open source in this March. And webOS, as you see, like we released TV, digital signage, refrigerator, like which enables the Alexa, Amazon Alexa, And also like recently we integrated like Google Assistant or like Facebook, lots of services in our webOS. And finally in March, we released webOS like as an open source. And there are like many goals, the reason why we opened webOS. First, we spent lots of time and we put lots of effort to develop webOS in TV and other devices. And we think that this effort can be shared to like other device manufacturers or like other developers. Because like if it is like only in LG, we can just do just small gigs. However, like other people in other external developers or external companies, if they utilize like our effort, then they can do lots of things. And also, we can also get help from the outside in. Actually, like lots of developers outside who are interested in like those kind of web-based platform, they can contribute much, and we can also get those fruit from external trees. And also, webOS is now very mature. Like 4 to 5 years, we enhanced a lot, and this is very stable, and performance is really good. So we think like we can go to emerging devices, something like robot. In robotics, actually webOS-based robot is running in South Korea, Incheon Airport. Like you can see webOS-based robot over there. And also we are preparing some automotive products. Like, we prepared this for like quite long years. When we first launched webOS-based TV, we had our roadmap to develop webOS Auto. However, as you may know, like automotive industry is like quite conservative. They are not very open to like many platforms because like automotive, they have like quite long service duration. So if they want to choose like they are very picky and they were hesitating. But anyway, like we are preparing this automotive area. And also like home automation or like intelligence in home side, like we are thinking about integrating other services into webOS. And also webOS can be one of the platforms for the home automation. Recently I visited Italy, and in Vatican I visited the Museum of Vatican. And I saw this torso. This is a very long time ago, like someone just created this one. And this doesn't have arms or legs. But later, Michelangelo, he got inspiration from this one, and he just painted this ceiling. And he painted Jesus based on the inspiration. Not only this, later French sculptor Rodin, he created this like the thinker sculpture being inspired by the torso. So when we first thought about this open webOS open source edition 3 years ago, we thought like we should spend lots of effort in this open source and there will be no ROI. So we hesitated a lot. But last year we decided, because of those goals, like we couldn't be successful in open source area. So we opened this webOS public. And I'm thinking like this current version of open webOS is kind of torso. However, like if we work together, we can make this ceiling painting or sculpture. It's like two different. However, like we can make like various products with this open source web edition. So please come and let's change the world together. So now I'm going to introduce my colleague Lokesh. He's going to more deep dive into like web engines and also like some other application side.
Thank you. At the time I was wondering he's going to cover all my slides. So yeah, here I'm going to talk a little bit more detail on why open source, what we open source, and how it's useful for everyone. So let me give you an overview of why we open sourced. So as you mentioned, webOS attracted LG, right, a big company. The first open source from HP attracted LG, and it actually went on millions of devices. It got those 400 or 500 plus engineers working on it. It has stabilized, it has matured, it has added many features, and it is now an industry standard for smart TVs. So webOS has evolved over time with LG. I think it was a good place. Before LG, HP was also a good place because it gave design perspective to webOS. So webOS has been evolving, and now it is time for the industry to take this and expand it. So I understand why Joseph was hesitant when we thought about opening webOS. It's like human nature. I become selfish when I'm making money out of something, but I have to be kind to the society as well. And I think it's all our purpose in software to make software better, and that's why we are here. So opening webOS, our goals are basically building a strong developer community around it, people who will contribute and make this the next sustainable OS, and also extend the portfolio through partnerships. So if you want to make a new product out of it, there are some pieces missing, come in-house, we can work together, make a product together. We want to extend the technology capabilities. So we release something, you have more ideas, let's work together and extend that capability that webOS has. I like this other thing, which is motivation internally, because I've been working in open source for a very long time. The first job I joined was in MIMO project, which was open source project from Nokia. And it was very exciting for me to work in open source project where I could talk to anybody outside my company anytime and actually get information and deep dive on a particular topic and brainstorm. So it's very motivating for internal developers to actually work with the community. So webOS Open Source Edition, as he mentioned, is a powerful and easy to use operating system. It's easily customizable, easily portable from one SoC to the other SoC. It comes with a rich app framework. It supports many app frameworks, but our main goal with webOS was web first. That is, make HTML the first citizen applications on this platform. So we released something called Enact.js that we built on top of React. I will talk a lot more details about what this is, how this is done, but this is a very rich framework, easy to use, easy to develop, and highly optimized for embedded devices. And it's an open platform now for all industries and all standards. As he said, we're shipping TVs, we're shipping refrigerators, we're shipping robots now. And our goal is also to ship auto tomorrow. So there are many things that are happening. You can find more details about what I'm saying at webososc.org. All the source code at GitHub, please go and try there. Let me share a little bit more details on the architecture. I know there are a lot many developers and architects here who would like to see, okay, what all you're giving. There are a bunch of services. There are a bunch of services that make a mature product that are in open source now. So there is a full-blown base component stack that gives you capabilities like the system compositor, gives you a web runtime in the system, gives you a full multimedia, rich multimedia. We ship TVs. Content is our main thing. So multimedia, strong multimedia technology, and gives you a bunch of services at the user space level. Things like diagnostics, things like notification, connectivity, app update mechanisms, software update mechanisms, and it supports JavaScript services. So you can bring in your own service in the middleware and add capabilities to them. And has a rich application framework that I was explaining. So it supports HTML5 JavaScript. It can be Enact, it can be React, it can be Polymer, it can be any JavaScript framework that you pick up. It supports Qt QML. You can run your Qt QML applications on top of it. You can run your own native application. You don't want Qt, don't want JavaScript, write C++ application or OpenGL application and deploy it on webOS. So this is a dynamic view of webOS, and webOS, everything is a service. Every damn thing is a service. And all the services are connected to one bus, which is called as Luna Bus. It's a lightweight bus, which was probably, in our world, it was basically better than dbus in terms of benchmarks. So it's a lightweight bus that everything runs on. So here I'm going to talk a little more detail about this webOS web runtime, or what is webOS web runtime framework. I will explain that in a little more detail after we see the roadmap of webOS. So here is the roadmap of what else is coming. As I said, we are still new in the open source market. We just released in March, but there are many things coming. The last month or last 2 weeks, we released things like memory management. We released QEMU emulator support, so that means you can run webOS OSC not only on an ARM device like Raspberry Pi, but you can also try things out on an x86 machine. Very soon, we're going to release a web browser that's going to be HTML JavaScript based, so running on top of Google's Chromium. So that capability is not there today in Chromium, but we're adding that capability. We're going to release full enhanced media support, so add more bits to our media support, already existing media support, and make it more optimized. We're going to release a very enhanced Bluetooth stack. And in midterm and long term, there are many things that will make this a very, very rich operating system in terms of closeness to a product level. So things like IoTVT are coming. There are things like robotics, like ROS integration coming. There are many other things related to performance, like secure boot, snapshot boot, EFS, things that LG actually uses internally, but wants to make them open source. So there are many things coming in this roadmap. So as I was telling you about Enact, I just want to share a little bit more details on this because I feel there are app developers here for whom this could be very interesting. So when we talk about frameworks, why do we need a framework? I mean, if I'm running a product, I want that consistent look and feel across all my apps. I don't want one app to be completely different look and feel compared to the other apps. So to keep that consistent look and feel, you need framework. To keep that high performance and the same behavior or the level of performance across apps, you need that framework. Because if you do an optimization in one app, you want that optimization to be available to other apps. So you do that at the framework level. And it makes, to make improvements, bug fixes, it's very easy if all apps are using one framework. You make the fixes in the framework available to all the apps. So it avoids a lot of duplication, removes a lot of extra resources that you need to add, so it makes life simpler as a product developer. This is a picture of what Enact looks like. So it has a bunch of components which are part of Enact code, which give you abilities like accessibility, full internationalization support. We ship on at least 100 countries or more than 100 countries with multiple languages. So there is a very, very big internationalization support. There is focus management, multi-resolution support. We ship from this size TV to this size TV. So a multi-resolution support, a componentization, so you can create your own components, a good optimized rendering support. And then, as I was mentioning, everything is customizable. It's so easy. There's an Enact UI layer, and on top of it, you can create your own widget sets. So we have Enact Moonstone, which is our TV widget set. So those big buttons, the big panels, and blah, blah, blah. We have a Zircon UI library, which is our Robo widget set. So round UI, round buttons, and things like that. So it's very easy. So if you're taking Enact, you want to add a new widget library for your product, just build something like Moonstone or Zircon. And you can have your own widget library, your own look and feel defined for your product. So these are many things that Enact provides. There is a very rich command line tools that it provides that come with the SDK. So it's very easy to build it, very easy to deploy it. It's very easy to do something on your host machine, actually see it live on the device. And we talked about accessibility and things like that already. It is highly optimized for embedded devices. So in TV markets, there is always a competition. If LG releases something, there's always a comparison with Samsung TV side by side. Oh, both these TVs give me live TV. Let's launch live TV together and see, okay, which one is launching faster. So launch times are very critical. So we optimize the launch times with V8 snapshot support. We optimize launch time by using the pre-rendering support from React and enhancing on top of it. So it's highly optimized for embedded devices, high performance, so 60 FPS on most of the things. So it's an amazing framework. Then you might ask the question, it's based off React, why not I just use React? When you use React, you're not just using React. You're using all these things. You have to learn all these things in order to use React. It's a 3-page documentation that you have to go through to do your first React application. With Enact, you have to just do 4 lines. Do this 4 lines and you have your first Hello World application with Enact. And it could look like this. This could be your first Hello World application using Enact. And it could be themed and skinned differently for different devices. And it is just one source code. One source code that you can change the theme and skinning at runtime or at compilation time. The same source code you can share for multiple devices. So please go ahead and try this out. There's enactjs.org and also webososc.org where you can find a lot more details. I want to introduce my next colleague, Steve. He's also from the Silicon Valley Lab in Santa Clara, and he's leading the innovation team, and he's going to share more details on what else we've been doing with webOS. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, so what's up? I'm Steve Lemke, and I work in Santa Clara with Lokesh in the Silicon Valley Lab of LG. Actually have been with LG/Palm for almost 22 years now, starting with Palm OS, and helped build webOS in the first place, an HP touchpad, and then made the transition to LG as we brought webOS to LG for smart TVs, and now we're open sourcing what we've been working on for the last 5 years. As others have mentioned, we've shipped in I don't know, 100 countries or so, and many millions of devices. So when you're trying to build an embedded product, you have other choices. You can build with Android. Some people have found that it's challenging, or there are problems or issues that they run into there, or other reasons why they don't want to use that. Then you say, okay, I'll use Linux, or maybe I'll use Yocto, or maybe I'll build it myself. But you're going to have to build a whole lot of pieces together. There's a lot of code out there to do that. It's easy to do, but those pieces all, if you can stand on what other people have done, then one of the things you can do is take webOS and actually build your bits on top of that rather than having to recreate what we've done. And I'll talk about how we've been actually trying to broaden that even more so. When we started talking about open sourcing webOS again, one of the things we wanted to do was to try to reach out to other communities of open source projects and find out, again, who else is trying to do what we've already done and how can we leverage what we've done to help them, and vice versa. So I'll talk about a couple of these in particular, automotive grade Linux and ROS, and then I'll talk about some of the other ones if we have some time. Sorry. So in automotive grade Linux, AGL, this is a project that, like webOS, is built on top of Yocto open source. It's an open source platform for automotive to build next generation infotainment systems for cars. And many of the OEMs and tier 1 providers are already using this. There's 127 member companies in AGL. It's the 3rd largest project in the Linux Foundation right now. And so there's a lot of momentum around building a common base platform. Toyota is very active in this, and I believe they're actually shipping it in the 2018 Camry. The AGL does not include all of the UI layer, so what you'll see in the Camry isn't stuff that's in AGL, but it's built on a common Linux platform that is AGL. And so, their goal was, again, to sort of do what we've been talking about here, is to leverage that effort. It doesn't make sense for each auto company to build a whole Linux platform from scratch and have to solve all the same problems, and that's why they made AGL. So we'd like to save you from that same hassle with giving webOS OSE. So we've been working with AGL for over a year in the Santa Clara lab, and we've used it for internal research and prototyping. We created a pretty neat demo that we showed at CES last January based on a 3D driving simulator and 3 different AGL systems, one running the infotainment, one running the instrument cluster, one running the rear seat entertainment, using some of our content from TVs. So in the AGL showcase, there were about 20 companies showing off what they were doing with AGL, but I think we had the best looking one, and everybody seemed to be coming to see what we were doing with it. And that was leveraging our webOS experience to make AGL something people could actually see and look at. And so one of the things that they talked to us about is actually bringing the web app manager, the heart of webOS, to AGL. And so actually we did, this is a picture of our demo at CES where we had, I think, 7 screens on 4 different computers running in the booth, but they're actually all integrated together to a bunch of different systems. So the components, one of the things that we can do besides bringing the web app manager, we've talked about that web app environment, we've brought that to AGL, but beyond that, there's a whole lot of pieces. All these blocks in red are pieces we're actually talking to AGL folks about actually lifting and making portable to bring over to AGL to fill in pieces that are missing from AGL. So we're not going to go to AGL and say you have to use webOS OSE, but there's a whole lot of technology. For instance, Download Manager is a tool or a utility, a service on our bus that can download blobs from the internet for a connected car. They don't have that, so they have to either build that from scratch and prioritize that among all the other things they want to do, but they can actually take that code from webOS OSE and drop that on AGL. And there's a whole lot of other pieces that they can take, and we can actually make a better platform together for that. And so that's one of the outreach examples that we're talking about. So using the web app runtime, for example, we did a proof of concept. We ported the web app manager from OSE. It took a couple of guys about a week, and we got it up and running on AGL. We actually built it from the source that's sitting on GitHub, and the AGL folks were able to also build from GitHub. So we pushed that all out there. It wasn't like we had to go and get a bunch of approvals and wait for things to roll out, but we were working in place on GitHub. And at the Automotive Linux Summit last month in Tokyo, there was another presentation on all the different ways to bring web apps to AGL, and they basically said that the LG solution was the best solution to do web apps on automotive. So we agree, and we're happy to be working with them. Another thing that we've been doing in the Silicon Valley Lab is working with ROS and ROS 2. And so we were already working with ROS, the MIT DuckyBot, DuckyTown projects. We've been talking about that in the booth and can tell you more about it if you want to come by and see. But ROS was originally a bunch of, let me go to my slide. What is ROS? It's a flexible framework. For those of you who don't know, ROS is, if you're doing anything in robotics, you know what ROS is. You learn that at university, and a lot of times you use those ROS components to put together robotics. ROS 2 is the next generation of ROS, where they kind of started over. They didn't want to disrupt all of the people that are actually using ROS today, so they started over with new technologies and new use cases. And ROS 2 is going forward to address things like autonomous driving and more sophisticated robots and connected devices and things. So we decided to look at ROS 2 and actually figure out how to integrate that with webOS OSE. So one of the things that, because webOS OSE runs on a Raspberry Pi, we had already been using Raspberry Pi for our ROS-based Ducky bots. We actually folded all this together into a single common build system. And again, this stuff is on GitHub. You can actually download the ROS and webOS OSE build and build it from the command line in a couple of steps. And you'll actually get a single embedded distribution that has all the benefits we've been talking about with OSE, built and designed and shipped for years on embedded devices, now with all the ROS components and ability to use all the ROS components there. More so, we also put a ROS bridge that allows us to actually bridge the ROS topics and the information flying around between the ROS components into the web apps. So that allows us to build our DuckyBot robot and put a screen on it and actually run our web applications on the DuckyBot. And then, as I mentioned, you can sort of communicate back and forth between the web world and the ROS world. So this allows people that were building a ROS robot to put a screen on and get all the rich the capabilities in web applications without them having to go figure out how to port Chromium and make it work on their hardware and render and have a UI framework or a JavaScript framework. We've brought all that there for you. And so I'll mention a couple other things. RDK is the distribution that's built on Yocto that enables the Comcast set-top box, if you've heard of the X1. So we've reached out to them to also, they have a very similar product as a stack that's what's in the webOS TV. So there's a lot of common pieces in there and places that we can benefit from things that they've done, and they can benefit from things that we've done. So again, we're reaching out and trying to figure out how to help each other in these open source communities. I talked about ROS and AGL. LG is also involved in AutoSAR and Adaptive AutoSAR, which again is an automotive platform built on Yocto. Linaro is doing some very interesting work on building specifications for how these open source systems are going to talk to each other on a car in a case where you have a very powerful, say, an NVIDIA processor and you want to run multiple things side by side on the same processor. It might be AutoSAR, it might be AGL, and AutoWare or Apollo to do autonomous driving, all of those stacks going side by side. Linaro is presenting a way of integrating all of those different platforms together, and since they're working with AGL and we are also, we'd like to be very involved in that. And then RISC-V is an example where there's a new architecture coming that a lot of people are getting excited about. It's an alternative to ARM. So silicon vendors really like that because it doesn't have the same licensing requirements as ARM. There's support in Yocto to run on RISC-V processors. And since anytime you have BSP support in Yocto that runs on some processor, it doesn't matter if it's ARM or x86 or something else like RISC-V or MIPS, we can take the webOS OSE and build it on that to run on that silicon as well. So with that, if there's questions, we can take questions. I can also show you a video that we've been showing in the booth. You want to show?
You can show the video and then we can take questions.
Okay, so let's show the video then.
Welcome to LG webOS. There are millions of LG devices running webOS. It has a simple user interface, and a very small footprint. LG open source webOS for developers, and then we added ROS support. Now anybody can make their own robot. Welcome to a ROS 2 based robot running webOS. It has a big display, camera, IR sensor, ultrasonic sensor, Intel compute stick, a Raspberry Pi 3, and 2 motors connected to the wheels. webOS provides support for web applications. Create your robot UI in a matter of hours. Use HTML5 and JavaScript. webOS has optimized rendering. Send the app from your browser to the robot. See each change in action. Web apps communicate with ROS to send commands or read data from sensors. Beanbird can recognize objects, and the web app makes expressions. A TV remote makes Beanbird curious. Joystick, a little bit nervous. Toy frog should be hunted. Beer bottles make it tipsy. And Beanbird is afraid of snakes. Build one yourself.
Sorry, we might have a few minutes left. No, we have a couple minutes left if there's questions. Any questions? Sure.
Is there an instructable for the Beanbird bot?
I don't think there is, but the bulk of it is really on MIT's website in their DuckyTown and DuckyBot. We just built DuckyBot as it was from MIT. We added a few sensors like the ultrasonic and the IR, and we added the Intel compute stick. But all of the code that's actually running on that is on our GitHub. I didn't have the link for it here, but I'll try to add it in the slides before we upload them. So it's github.com/LGSCL. as in Silicon Valley Lab. So most of the webOS OSE stuff is on github.com/webOS OSE, and that link was in the slides. The ROS edition is on LGSBL on GitHub. So all of that stuff has already been pushed out because we're planning to also talk about it at OSCON in Spain in a month or two. Yes?
Is the open source edition the same one used on your TVs? And if not, will it be in the future?
It has many bits that are from the TV, except the TV service bit itself. So rest of the bits are at the same maturity level as the TV.
Yeah, so many of the components are there. We have a whole roadmap, and many of the pieces on that roadmap are additional parts coming from TV. It's not a current goal to give you an OSE that builds to replace the TV. There's a lot of proprietary stuff and things under license and applications like Netflix.
Yeah, the DRM content and stuff like that, we can't open source that. We're trying to find alternatives for people of how to do that stuff in open source.
I was thinking more about contributions that the open source community makes. Would that get into the TV?
Yes.
Yes.
So the internal builds are based off OSA.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, and we do have a plan to, in the community, now that we're actually kind of separated from the TV, the OSE version can live on its own and move ahead faster than we could move internally. So we will move to newer Chromium, newer Yocto, and things that have been really hard to do internally that we couldn't do as quickly as we wanted to, and TV will benefit from that. So that effort, as well as adding capabilities to the webOS OSE components, like I mentioned AGL, instead of having to write a download manager, they can add features to the download manager that we already have. That will come back in and benefit all of LG products and anybody else who's building on that.
We have a 6-month release cycle basically, and it's the same team, the reference platform team, who is actually releasing the platform for TV products as well. So in order to avoid the duplication, we will try to keep them innocent.
Yep. And so in terms of interacting with us, GitHub is a great place. The code is there. We're responding to issues that are posted there as well as pull requests. There's a forum at webosose.org that you can participate in. There's been talk of maybe doing a Stack Overflow, which was just brought up today, but we'll go back and look at that. There could be
Enact guys are on Slack.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the Enact team has been on open source for many years, so this is not new and open source. They've been working out in the open on GitHub for years, going back to the video days before Enact. So, and apparently we are out of time. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you.